Welcome to our first video of this kind, and we are trying to analyze Schwarzesmarken. As you probably know from the description, it's a show about East Germany, and we are both more or less East Germans. So we try to look at the show and how accurate it actually is compared to real history, because most of the world doesn't know much about East Germany and probably not the right things. So my name is Reis.
And I'm Saint Sandit.
And we are both majors in Japanese studies, and our secondary major in my case is work-orientated linguistics, and his is history.
Right.
So he's the right guy to go to. That's why he and I are going to look at the show. We're going chronologically, and we are going from episode to episode and try to explain most of the DDR stuff to you. So if you have questions about certain things, be sure to make a comment to let us know what we should explain to you, because some things that seem natural to us may not be natural to you.
I will cut in at this point because he mentioned DDR. Do not be confused, he does not mean Dance Dance Revolution. He means the GDR, the German Democratic Republic. In German, the acronym is DDR, and that's simply because it translates from German Democratic Republic to Deutsche Demokratische Republik. So if that acronym is thrown around, don't be confused, we just mean East Germany by that.
And West Germany, by the way, is BRD.
And in English it's the FRG.
So I thought I'd give you a short introduction into the Muv-luv universe, because I think maybe that's helpful before we look at things. So Muv-luv started out as an Galge, basically the most stereotypical harem Galge or eroge you know. Basically there's a guy, there are 5 different girls who got the hots for him, and it's really almost only moe and kind of, you know, the chibi versions with the punching and the making fun of. So basically you have to play through the 2 routes of the main characters. You unlock the second part of the game, which is Muv-luv Unlimited. In this world, the main character gets into a parallel dimension where aliens invaded Earth, and he starts as a complete noob. He doesn't know how to pilot a mech, and he gets put into like this group of other fighters that are the love interest in the normal game. And in Unlimited, he can also becomes love interest to any of the girl, but it's much darker than before. And Muv-luv Alternative, the last part, is the main universe we are talking right now about. In Muv-luv Alternative, he regains all memories from before. So every girl he got, that is a different timeline. Like they all existed, and when he died, it was reset to a certain point in time. And thus, in Alternative, he regains all memories and his trained body. The timeline of Muv-luv Alternative is straight. There is no change anymore, and that's why it's considered to be the main timeline. But Schwarzesmarken plays roughly 20 years before that point, so Schwarzesmarken is a prequel to Unlimited and Alternative because the timeline didn't change at that point. The enemy, the Beta, are a silicon-based entity that invaded Earth. The motivations aren't clear. Actually, in Alternatives, there is an explanation, but that's a spoiler, so I might consider doing an extra video for it, but I won't conclude it into this because the spoilers in these videos are only as far as the episode goes. And everything that doesn't belong necessarily to it is extra, because I don't want to be the dick that spoils people too much. Very important with these betas is they can cross water. They have to dig tunnels under it to get to different grounds, and they can't fly. So you might think, hey, they can't fly. Can't the humans bomb them from the sky? And that's the point where this show comes in. No, they can't, because there are two different types of laser betas that kill any kind of air support instantly. There's one rule with these betas: they won't shoot their comrades. So actually the humans have only one way to fight, and that's directly from the front, fight against the betas, and then take out the laser betas so air support can come in and help the ground guys. And Schwarzesmarken is a group which primary target are these laser betas.
ベータとの生存をかけた戦いに突入することになった。そして10年後、その最前線となっているのがドイツ民主共和国。東ドイツだ。
The fight starts at the eastern border, Frankfurt an der Oder, which is one of the most eastern cities in Germany. So that makes sense.
And an interesting thing we see right away is we see the East German Army, the NVA, or in English it's the National People's Army. You see their equipment, and for the most part it's quite accurate. They've got mostly Russian equipment like the East German Army had back in the day. An interesting difference, however, was the helmets that they used. Because in the East German Army they continued the line of Stahlhelme that already Germany used in World War II and World War I. And the interesting thing is that they have a model that seems to be older. The NVA used the M56 model, and that looked kind of close to what the British had or what the Viet Cong were using, while the one in the show is much closer to the variants from 33 to 40. It's much more like the Wehrmacht. Now, it is obviously logical that in such a huge war for survival of the human race that they would come up with a new helmet out of necessity. But it seems kind of weird to me that they went back to an older model.
So you might argue that they had made simpler, because most of the beta are one-hit kill. If your mech gets hit by a laser, you're instant dead.
Well, still, if a building collapses above you, debris and all of that. The thing is, why this surprised me. As the M56 says, it's from 1956, so it's decades before Schwarzesmarken even starts. And the model that the NVA used in real life was actually even simpler than the one they use here. But yeah.
Yeah, well, it's 17 years before, so it is an interesting point. But don't think we are nitpicking, it's just we are saying the difference. It's not that is much of a problem to us.
You have a general description of how the Stasi works in East Germany. That's short for Staatssicherheit, or basically state security. They were basically the East German version of the KGB or the CIA. But since it was a totalitarian system, they were spying on their own population and all of that. And the way it is described there is quite fitting, that you couldn't even know if your neighbors, family members, or even your best friends would be Stasi members. And also psychological terror that they hinted at is quite real.
お前の言ってることはこの国じゃ通用しない。あんなのを聞かれたらあっという間にシュタージに連行されてあの世行きだ。敵はベータだけじゃない。隣の人間も敵なんだ。
Just a quick example. Dissidents within the East German system, the Stasi would use psychological warfare in a certain way. For example, when you go out to work and they know that you are not really an ardent socialist. They would enter your flat while you are at work, and they would just move a few pieces of furniture around, just slightly. And you come home and you think, wait a second, that chair didn't stand there. Or did it? I must have put it there. And you slowly start questioning yourself, and you can go crazy and all of that. And also, as they said there, that there's no real religion anymore. That's also quite true in East Germany. Religion, I mean, the churches, they were left standing, and they still had priests, but overall religion was quite suppressed, to a point where they would refuse and make huge detours to avoid using any religious words. For example, the word Engel, which is German for angel. If they had an angel figure somewhere, they would not call it angel officially in East Germany. They would officially call it a Jahresendzeitflügelfigur. That's a long German word. It means as much as a figure for the end of the year with wings. Just to give you an idea what they thought about religion in general.
So one important fact here is that nowadays you can say that the DDR is a dictatorship. That of course they didn't use that word, and of course West Germany tried to not use that word, but nowadays it is stated that it was a dictatorship. No buts. But you shouldn't compare to the likes of North Korea. It's not like that the living conditions were so bad in Germany. You could still live in Germany quite okay.
Yeah, you could have a comfortable life. The thing is, it's actually worth noting, East Germany, among all the socialist countries back then, had the highest living standard. East Germans who went to Soviet Russia back then, they were shocked how miserable the people there lived. But then again, East Germany was in a special position. For example, the state could get a lot of money because since you have two Germanys, West Germany felt responsible for the East Germans as well. So what East Germany liked to do was they sent the Stasi to take a few prisoners of dissidents, and then they would sell these dissidents to the West. The West could buy them free, and to a huge part, humanitarian aid from West Germany kept East Germany afloat for a long time. But yeah, overall, the living standard in East Germany was exceptionally high for socialist countries.
We still have huge debts
but every
from that
country
time.
does.
Yes, but for example, very important is that my mother and my grandmother always say, well, the food was really cheap. That isn't entirely true, because the state did pay a certain amount of the food so the general public could afford it. And that's something my parents are not quite accepting, but it's a fact. And this is the kind of way the DDR tried to make it look like the state can live on its own. One thing you complained about is the map of the security map, or
the world map just in general. There are a few things that itch me the wrong way. For example, you basically have this typical split of NATO and Warsaw Pact, and certain countries were shown as part of NATO or Warsaw Pact despite never being part of any of them. And in some ways I think that more countries would stay neutral. And I still can't quite believe that they actually had Switzerland not neutral here, for example. Other things, this map, it initially shows in that episode the divide of Berlin and the German occupation zones. And then it zooms out and you see the world map. So I'm going to assume that it shows the state right after World War II. And even in that case, it would be very inaccurate, because of the Middle East, you see, I think it's Syria, Iraq, and several other countries there, and Egypt. They're shown as parts of the Soviet Union or the East, or just the International Communist Alliance, which they never were, just as Yugoslavia. but the same can be said for the West. While all of Africa being part of the Western powers in form of colonies would be correct in 1945, states like Sweden or Finland, they were never part of NATO, and so on and so forth. But that's all nitpicky.